Okay, guys, let's get started. Technical problems. I had a really cool video. I'm going to show it to you next time. Let's see. Hopefully I can sort this out by then. But for now, I'm afraid no cool video, but hopefully we'll get there. There's a new lecture theater. I haven't been in here before yet. Great to see you guys again. Yeah, I think we know each other. I wish I could remember all of your faces, but I don't. It's just a large number of people, but I'm glad to have you here. It also means that you made it through my last lecture, so that's kind of good. Although it was mostly the tutors that were at the end dealing with the exams, so I didn't deal too much with that. But I'm happy to have you here again. And today, we're starting this second year lecture, Analytical Sociology. It's a more substantive lecture that I'm giving, and some of the stuff builds on things that I had mentioned last year already. There's going to be new stuff. I had mentioned a few things while I was going along already, partly also because I'm just really in the middle of what we nowadays call analytical sociology. It's kind of like a bunch of, sociologists in the last 10 years that formed this new movement within sociology, and I just happen to be in the middle of this from the very beginning on. So there are regular conferences, there are meetings and stuff, and special issues of journals and all these kinds of things. But you will see is that this is much more substantive now. So this will be much more topic-oriented and substantive, and there will be readings as well. I'll come back to that in a second. But it will be much more the real stuff. Yeah? So you're in your second year now, and I think you're ready for that. Okay, before we start, today I'm mostly going to talk about some general intro stuff, so I won't have too much substantive things today, but nevertheless stuff that we all agree upon, or that you know how this whole course works. To get started, my 3 rules, they are the same. The first rule is to show up. Why? Because life rewards showing up, but also because this year, especially this year around, I'm going to have much more interactive components. Well, we already had a lot of interactive components last year, but I'm going to try to have that even more this year. And in a smaller setting, we can actually do this. We can actually do this much better. So there's definitely an incentive for you to be here. But I come back to that in a second. I will be recording these lectures here too, so you will have access to that afterwards as well. Second one, paying attention. I think it's a no-brainer. We are all here to learn something, or I hope you are. And but again, it's much easier in a smaller setting. You already see it's much less noisy, and the acoustics are better, even though the technicalities still don't work. So I don't know. This university is beyond me, but that's a whole other issue. Pay attention. Third rule, there are going to be readings again, right? And as you'll see, there are going to be a little more readings this term. I'm going to push this ahead, but it's all stuff, maybe one article, sometimes maybe 1.5 or 2 per week. But it's all stuff that I carefully selected. I selected it for, different criteria. First one, I only selected what I think is good stuff. I think there's no point in you reading shitty stuff, and there's an awful amount of shitty stuff out there. Seriously, don't get me started on this. There's an awful amount of shitty work out there. So, and probably at this stage of your career, of your university life, you're still struggling with what is actually good and what is bad. So a big thing in this course is for me to convey to you how to assess good and bad, and that's sort of where it builds on last year's course, to get this feeling for, okay, is this now, because just because something is written and something is published or something is in a journal or in a book, that doesn't mean that it's good. Sometimes it's really crappy. So I want you to be sensitive about all these kind of things. Also the stuff that I talk about here. It's really, I want you to develop and have this critical attitude. That is ultimately what we teach you in sociology. That's sort of what you get. So do the readings. I selected good stuff. But I also selected stuff that I think is digestible. So there's nothing in there that is super technical, that is super crazy in a way. So often it's kind of relatively straightforward stuff. And that's the most difficult to write, actually, to write in such a straightforward way that it's actually understandable. by people. And in many ways, this is what analytical sociology is all about as well. Analytical sociology is about being very clear and being very precise. So folks got really fed up with stuff where people do just a lot of mumbo jumbo. They just talk a lot, and the people wonder what is the substance of this. Yeah? So this is sort of the backdrop where analytical sociology comes into play. But I will talk more about that next week. For now, just keep in mind the readings, they are important. And actually, they're even more important this time because there's going to be a test about the readings. There's going to be some form of continuous assessment that encourages you to stay on top of them. Okay, technology-wise, you know me. So it's basically the same spiel. So you will get the lectures if the recording doesn't screw up on Blackboard. Yeah, so you go on Blackboard and you will see not only just the slides but also the video of the whole thing. I know that I talk with a lot of colleagues about that, and they always say, "Thomas, what the hell are you doing? Yeah, this is crazy," and a lot of people are very protective of that. And I even overheard conversations where folks talk to students and they wouldn't even give them the lecture slides. Yeah. I think, guys, where are we? So I think it's much more important to use your energy to actually learn this stuff than to hunt it down. So that's my philosophy. So in this course, you don't have any excuse because everything is up there, right? So that's just plainly there. I don't want to give people points for being extra clever in hunting things down in the library or not. Yeah? I want to give points for actually understanding things and learning something. Yeah? So that's sort of my philosophy. So you'll have the videos, yeah. You'll always have the quizzes. We'll have some quizzes. It's just kind of funny. So now all my colleagues want to do these things. So a lot of colleagues actually adapting that. I'm really happy to see that in sociology. Yeah. Actually, other folks at the college are now adapting this too. It's a little crazy, but no, it's fun. It's fun for me too. So why not? Have these things. We're going to have. At the beginning of every lecture, I'm going to have a small little quiz about the readings that you had to do. That is sort of for me to get a feeling for what were the difficulties with the readings. Did you understand it? Did you actually do the readings? So I can react to this just in time. And then we're going to have probably at the end of the term, maybe in between, I'm not entirely sure about the middle one, but we're going to have a big quiz session as well, which is also for you a way to see where you're at. All of this stuff, these quizzes, these two kind of quizzes are not graded. This is stuff for you to see where you're at and for me to get some feedback and to kind of reflect that back onto you so that I see directly where the problems are. So these are the two components that you are already familiar with. But then this term I'm going to try out something new. I'm going to try out something new because I just like to try out new things. So we're also going to have an online test. So we're going to have one, I think it's after the 4th week, and another one after the 11th week, but it's clearly outlined in the syllabus, and I have a few slides about that in a second. And that's going to be a test in Blackboard, and it's going to be assessed. It's just a form of continuous assessment. Why am I doing this? Well, now, unfortunately, we don't have tutorials here anymore. I wish I would, but I would have that, but we don't have the resources here at UCD to have that in the 2nd and in the 3rd year anymore. So it's only for some groups where we can actually have it. So here we don't have tutorials anymore. But at the same time, I would like to have some continuous assessment with you, so that also for you, you see where you are. These online tests, we'll talk more about that. Don't freak out about it. Again, there's nothing to freak out about this whole lecture. It's very straightforward. If you do what I tell you, you have nothing to worry about. And it's also encourages you to stay on top of the readings because it's easy to fall behind. And then, let's face it, you're screwed at the end of term. Then, I don't know, the term comes to the end and you have 1 week for the exam. It's not going to happen. So this is sort of, it's like a fail-safe device where I'm protecting you from yourself to not fall behind in a way. So that's sort of how I see this. But let's see how it goes. I have no idea how it goes. Let's see how it goes and if the technical problems can all be sorted out. Okay. Just for the fun of it, take out your phones, computers, whatever you have, right? because all this stuff is going to be on Blackboard. Yeah. Is there anybody here who wasn't in my class last year? Okay, so a few people. Okay, that's good to know. So it's good that we have this here. This is sort of stuff that we did last year already, so some of your other fellow students, they know this kind of stuff already. All of the course material is on Blackboard, the whole syllabus, the readings, the slides. I will post videos there. So everything is going to be the assessment, the assignment, everything is going to be through Blackboard, which is why it's crucial for you guys to figure that out. But you're in your second year, so others use Blackboard too, so I guess this is sort of like the thing to go. Perfect. Okay, I take this for granted that everybody knows how Blackboard works. If there would be some problems, you could get technical help. Oh God, my computer. Can you believe it? On Sunday afternoon, my computer fried on me. So my computer just crashed, and it wasn't even starting anymore. And I thought, what the hell, worst time ever. There you go. Okay. There we go. Worst time ever. Have backups, and seriously, you don't regret it. Have a backup. I'm going to have a proper backup solution very soon, once I kind of get everything running again. Blackboard, you find the course material there. So you find a new syllabus up there. Actually, I just made a small update to it this morning. So if you have printed it out already before, there's a small change in the required readings for the second week, and another one for, I think, the 6th week or something like that. So just to bear that in mind. But the most accurate version, or the latest version, is there. You find the whole spiel about how it all works, and what is required and how it all goes. But also the syllabus with an outline about what we're going to talk about in each of the lectures and how it all works. So as I already mentioned, there are sort of 4 big components in this course. It's going to be the readings. They are important, right? So it's going to be tests about that. It's going to be actually real stuff. Yeah. So it's not just, a textbook anymore, but this is like a real article. Right? This is real stuff that I read when I do research, when I work, or that my colleagues read and so on. And I think you cannot be exposed to these kind of things too early. Yeah, I really believe that we shouldn't dumb things down. But you should get the real stuff, and the real stuff is supposed to be clear and very straightforward anyway. Yeah. So the readings, that's going to be in the lectures. We're here at a much better time. Seriously, last year I had to give this lecture at 9 o'clock in the morning. I told my administrators, if you want me to give a good lecture, change that, please. Seriously, I didn't want to be there. Yeah? And it was really horrible. And I don't know. So now 1 o'clock is a much better time for me. I hope for you too. It's Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 o'clock. I think on Fridays we're in another lecture theater, but I have something about that in a second. There's going to be one assignment in the middle of the term, and there are going to be 2 online tests. Yeah? So this is sort of this continuous assessment that I envision for this course. The readings, when you go on Blackboard or Syllabus, there you see a clear outline with the dates of which lecture happens. So for example, for Friday, we have 1 required reading already. Yeah? So when you go into Blackboard, it's this article by Sokal, Transgressing the Boundaries Towards the Transformative Hermeneutics of Quantum Gravity. It's a funny title, huh? But you just read it, and I'm going to give the solution on Friday, what it is all about with that text. So there you find required readings. That's what it is. It's a required reading. Yeah? So read that before the lecture. I also add further readings. That's really for you if you are really interested in something. So I don't expect you to read that. That's also not necessary for the exam or anything. But I thought while I'm putting this together, why not? If you kind of are interested in a particular area, or if you want to learn more about something, or at some point, I don't know, think about a master's thesis or another independent research project later down the road, you already have some starting points for this. So I might draw on some of these things in my lecture, but I don't expect you to to have read that. But I will expect you to have read the required reading. Okay, the lectures, Tuesdays and Fridays. Tuesdays we are here, where the HDMI cable doesn't transmit audio right now, which really sucks, but hopefully I get that sorted. And Fridays we are in the R lecture theater, which is also around the corner here, somewhere, I think. One notice already, on the 24th of February, there's no lecture. I'm not going to be around. And we're going to have a reading break in the middle of March. Yeah? But I'll keep you informed about these kind of things. But so that you know already. Okay, for the lectures, as I said, this year I'm going to try out something different. Let's see how this goes. This is just the second year I'm teaching this now anyway. Well, the second year is already so much easier than the first year. Seriously, last year was a hell of work. So what I'm going to try differently this time, I want to have a little more within-class activities. So there might be moments where I'm interrupting the lecture and I give you a task, and then this task is, I don't know, maybe a small group task, or where I ask you to discuss something with the person next to you, and we will talk about it. Yeah. So I want to bring you in a little more, and I think in this setting we can do that even more than with just the clickers or with the online stuff. But this stuff is also not graded, but it's a little more of an interactive version of learning that I'm going to try. Okay, so that's the lecture. We have an assignment. There's one assignment. It will be posted on Blackboard on the 10th of March. And then you essentially have 2 weeks' time to complete the assignment. That's the break. So I'm on break. You guys will, I hope you'll have a nice break too, but you also have a little more time then. That's what I thought. It's much easier to do that over the break than when you have lots of other lectures going on. You have 2 weeks' time, submissions through Blackboard, but I'll talk about that when we get to that point. So there's going to be no physical submission, but everything runs through Blackboard. It's much easier for me too, because then I have it on my computer, and otherwise I would just print it and we don't have to do these kind of things. Okay, so that's the assignment. Other things seem to be obvious, plagiarism. Seriously, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Why the hell are you at university if this is what you're doing? And so use this opportunity. You're paying a lot of money for this education. Use it to actually learn something. But if there are some medical issues or something else, as last year, our undergraduate administrator Deirdre, she's very nice. If you had some dealings with her, she's also very knowledgeable in these kind of things. So she's going to help you out. Okay. So I haven't put it up yet, but this is where it's going to be. On assessment, Blackboard. But we'll talk about it when we come to it. Let's talk about these online test thingies. Yeah. So as I said, this is something that I wanted to try out, and I thought about how to play it. So I thought, okay, maybe 2 could be a nice thing to have. And it's going to be a test in Blackboard, right? So in Blackboard, most likely it's going to be a multiple choice test in Blackboard, where you kind of get some questions on the readings that we had up to that point. Yeah. So there's going to be, it's also going to be a take-home test. Yeah? So that's sort of maybe something that you haven't been exposed to yet either. Basically, I'm going to post this on the Friday, on the 17th of February, and the second one on the 21st of April. At this time, just for the lecture, and then you have 72 hours to submit this. So basically, you can go home. You can look at the readings. That's sort of the whole point of this. So it's not that you cannot use the material. Again, it's sort of like a different kind of thinking. I don't want to encourage you to, to learn stuff without thinking stuff. I would much rather have you be able to apply the knowledge, because nowadays, let's face it, it's not access to knowledge that is the problem anymore. That's sort of solvable nowadays. It's what you make out of it and kind of comprehending it and understanding it. So you have 72 hours to complete that. Basically, on the following Monday after the weekend, you have to submit that through Blackboard. But more on that when we get to that point. There's going to be 2 of them. The first one, I think, it's after the end of the 4th week, and the second one is at the end of the 11th week, and then it's the material that we covered up to that point. And the second test, I don't know, I'm not going to cover the stuff that we already covered in the first one. Right? Okay. Again, it's going to be an assessment, but I'll have to figure that out. But don't worry about it just yet. So that's the continuous assessment part, yeah? And the whole idea, as I said, is really just to keep you rolling with this and keep you on top of things, because things can, I don't know, nobody wants you to get washed under stuff, yeah? But this can happen at university. A lot of things happen, and at the beginning nobody is really forcing you to do anything, and then at the end it comes all together and you are fucked. Yeah? So that sort of can happen so easily. So that's why we're having this whole idea of continuous assessment, to keep you in the loop on this. So that's about that. There's also going to be an exam at the end of the term, right? And the exam is still going to weigh as a very heavy weight. That's not up to me. That's just a school level decision. That in the second year we're still going to give it 80%. So 80% of your final grade for this course is going to come out of the end of term exam. We don't have the date yet, but it will be announced. For these exams, you will need in-depth knowledge of the required readings, and obviously also of the lectures that I'm giving. Okay, and then another 10% for these take-home tests. That basically just check that you've done these readings. That's the idea behind that. And another 10% for the assignment, which is more of a transfer of knowledge assignment. And also, which forces you to write something, because we realize, okay, writing is actually something that we should put a bit more of an emphasis on here. Okay, so that's sort of the grading stuff, that's sort of the formalities and things. Moving on to how, I don't know if you have any questions for this course. First, the module information in Blackboard. Right, that's sort of a lot of helpful information there. I also set up yet another discussion board. It's really up to you to use it or not. It's just an option that we have that can be useful to have some peer-to-peer interaction, and often your fellow students, they know a lot of things. They're very knowledgeable. Actually, the folks that I learned most from at my university life was not the professors, it was my fellow students. And I'm still in touch with them. So don't underestimate that as a resource. That's very, 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 very useful. Also in exam preparation and so on. It's very, very useful. Even sometimes just to give you a feeling that you're not alone with this. Or that you might not have understood something, and then somebody else can help you out and so on. So it's very, very helpful. So if you do have questions, your peers. But then we have Deirdre, our undergraduate administrator, for all the administrative stuff that I know hardly anything about. Although now I don't have that excuse anymore, but I love to have that excuse last year. Because I was just new by myself here, I could always say, I don't know how this works here. But now I'm knowing it a little more. But still, Deirdre is the person for any administrative issue. Or if you have some medical issues or some other things. And then we don't have tutors, but feel free to get in touch with me. Especially when there's something that you're uncomfortable with talking about on the discussion forum. I don't have office hours, but I do have office hours by appointment. Basically, that means I just don't want to hang around here all the time. So if you do want to meet me, write me an email, we set something up, and that's sort of how it goes. Okay. Do you have any questions so far?
It's probably something that we'll cover later on.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the written assignment later on in the semester, what kind of length in terms of words will we be looking at for that?
I haven't decided it yet, to be honest. It's also, I have to rethink that a little bit, because now we have these online tests. So I'm obviously going to give it a little less weight on that. But you might get 2 essay questions, maybe a bit like in an exam, and this is like then a test for you to see how you would actually deal with that kind of scenario. But I don't think it's going to be, I don't know, more than 2,000 words for sure. Less. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But I'll come back to that. Any other questions? Okay, well, it's great. That means everything is fine. Now is everything? Are we happy? We're happy. Yeah. Excellent. So then let me start with a little bit of what this course is about. I'm not going to get too substantive today. I'm just going to give you a bit of a teaser on the stuff that we are going to eventually talk about. So analytical sociology, this term. What is it? Yeah, you read it in the I don't know, in the course book. You wonder what the hell is it? Yeah. Still, people wonder what it is. Well, I have a whole lecture on what is analytical sociology on Friday, and but basically, it's a bunch of sociologists that came together. Well, the first ones came together in the early 90s. But then it kind of got another push in the 2000s, which actually was when I did my PhD. Actually, the founding father of analytical sociology happened to be my PhD advisor, was Peter Hedström. We'll have some readings of him. Actually, he's going to visit us. He's going to give a talk here at UCD on the 8th of February. So I think that's in 2 weeks' time. So Peter Hedström, he was this professor at the University of Oxford. And him and then a bunch of other sociologists, well-known dudes in Europe, they came together and they were sort of frustrated with how sociology had developed over the last few years, because there was a strong postmodern strand. Maybe you've been exposed to some of that kind of stuff. Some of my colleagues do that kind of stuff. I don't want to say it's kind of bad, yeah? But a lot of it was really weird stuff and complicated and not straightforward at all, right? And so people thought, okay, let's kind of bring some of the things that we really believe in, which is clarity, which is precision, which is straightforwardness in explanation, which is a mechanism-based reasoning, so really thinking about how do things come about, and then also thinking about, okay, what we actually observe on a society level that might not necessarily be what individuals want, and then it becomes, I think, really fascinating, because you have all these social dilemmas, yeah, where collectively you end up in a scenario that nobody wants. Yeah? So we can end up, and I will show it to you, we'll actually have 2 lectures or maybe 2.5 on this. I'm going to show you how collectively we can end up with segregation. Segregation is this thing where traditionally it used to be racial segregation, where blacks used to live in some parts in the city and whites in other parts and Hispanics in another parts and so on. And it's massive. It's huge, even nowadays. You will be astonished by how much segregation there is in the world, how much inequality there is in the world. And then people always sort of thought, okay, well, people are racist. But actually I'm going to show to you that we can end up collectively on a macro level in a segregated world, even when individuals want to live in an integrated world. So even when people are highly tolerant, we can still end up in a scenario where people separate, right? And that's sort of like a big key in this analytical sociology as well, and we're going to talk about that, I think, in the second week, where we talk about the whole and the parts, where we basically separate the macro and the micro level. Yeah? And I had talked about that a little bit in my lecture last year, just because I thought it was cool to have this, this student admission stuff. So we're going to come back to that a little bit. But that's sort of the key in here, that what you see on the societal level, and that's sort of where I want you to start thinking. Yeah? I want you to start thinking, hang on, it would be wrong to conclude that this is sort of driven by individuals acting in exactly the same way as what the outcome suggests. Yeah? And the reason for that is because people behave in a certain way, which influences other people to behave in a certain way, which may change the environment for others and so on, and then you can have these cascades. Yeah? And that's sort of also a new element in this analytical sociology. It's more like a non-linear type of thinking. Yeah? When you come from other disciplines, it's much more straightforward. Physicists think like that for ages. Yeah? Sociologists are still starting to begin like that. Sociologists always think when there's a huge amount of inequality, there needs to be a huge reason for it. Or when there's little inequality, there's little reason for inequality for it. Yeah? That's a linear kind of thinking. But here we'll have many examples, and the key really is like the interdependencies between individuals, how these can then trigger cascades where even small sparks can light up a huge fire. And protest movements are like that, for example. It's a very interesting phenomenon, protest movements. Yeah. Actually, my second supervisor in Oxford, Michael Biggs, who happened to be here last year, he's working on protest movements, and he has been talking about that, giving a talk here not too long ago. Okay, but we'll come back to all these kind of things, but essentially it really is about, for me it starts with thinking. Yeah? And it starts with, how do we make an explanation? Well, we talked a little bit about that last year, how you make an explanation, and where you realized, oh wow, there's actually stuff that I hadn't thought about before. And how we make an explanation, how something comes about. Not just, you observe this and we observe that, and that's sort of how they are related with each other, but it's really thinking about how does it come about, and that's what we call the mechanism, or the generative process. It's another word that will come up a few times. The generative process that kind of leads to what we actually observe. So it's a lot about thinking. The way we approach this is sometimes with computer simulations. We won't have to do that here and show you some examples, but it's really just a simplification of getting that process right, of how one thing tips and then something else tips and something else tips and then something else tips and so on. How big things can come out of that, which I think is very, very important to think about, especially when you are involved, let's say, in a protest campaign. Then it actually really matters if you show up there or not. It really matters, because the fact that you show up, of course you're just one person. You think, okay, who cares? But then actually this might lead to other people then kind of showing up and participating, and then you can have these cascades that unfold. But there's a lot of stuff that I come back to it. I don't know why I have this slide. I thought about something. Sometimes I put these slides in where I think about something, but then I don't remember what I thought about, why I put it in. Maybe I just thought it's cool. I don't know. But it is about the big and the small. We'll talk about the big and the small, and hopefully to change your perspective a little bit about how the big and the small connect, how they are related with each other, and sometimes in a very confusing way. Essentially, it just really challenges your thinking that big things are not necessarily triggered by big reasons. Or that when something doesn't happen, there's no big reason that could have made it happen. Anyway, I think one reading that we have, I was a little too late, but otherwise I always like to sit in the lecture theater and see how people come in, because that's another thing. That's sociology. I think that's actually fascinating stuff. I just love the kind of stuff, just to observe things. I think sociology is a fascinating subject. Why? Because you just have to observe your world. You just have to open your eyes. And society is all around you. It's everywhere around you. And then you see these dynamic processes, social dynamics, how one thing affects the other. So when people come in, for example, the first person coming in really sets the tone for where the other people sit. So people did studies on these kind of things, where they moved in and the first people sat somewhere, and then next time they sat somewhere else, and then they kind of observed how the whole pattern actually changes at the end of the day. Right? So each single person might just slightly change their behavior, but collectively we end up in a very different scenario. So there's a book that I highly recommend, but it is on the reading list and for the reading break as well. It's by Thomas Schelling. Actually, he's a Nobel Prize winner. I have some funny stories about Thomas Schelling that I'm going to mention at some point. And he wrote this book, Macromotives and Microbehavior. Micromotives and Macrobehavior. And there he writes, it's stuff that you can really read. It's really nice. It's kind of like the stuff that you pick up at the airport. If you like these kind of books, you're going to love this lecture. That's sort of the kind of stuff that this stuff is about. And so he writes for 10 15 pages about how the dynamics are, or possible explanation for the patterns that we have, how people walk into a lecture theater. Underlying this are these dynamics. I mentioned that already before. One thing leading to something else, leading to something else. You can also call that tipping behavior or threshold models. They're sort of more technical terms. But at the end, it really is just this basic understanding that social life is inherently interdependent. And then I sometimes wonder, how how can people do sociology not acknowledging that? And you would be surprised, a large amount of people, and this is sort of why this analytical sociology came in, and why I really got bored by that, because I think, man, this is really how social life works. And how can we do sociology assuming that all of us are interdependent from each other, meaning that we don't relate to each other, meaning that what we do has no effect on what somebody else does. But when you look at sociological studies, I would say nowadays maybe 80% of them do that. That's what they do. They kind of always assume that people are independent from each other. But I think they are not. Social life is not independent. We are related, not everything is related to everything, of course. But just think about it, and that's kind of the kind of stuff that will show up in the assignment, where I will have you think about other experiences that you make where you experience these dependencies in your life. When you go out, the way you dress, the way you speak, the way you behave in a lecture theater, all these kind of things, there are certain norms established, and how are they getting established by other people around you, so you're dependent on them somehow. Right? So all this is like a constant feedback process, and that's also why most of my own work is actually on social network analysis. So that's sort of where I write my books and articles, and actually right now I'm writing a book on that, technical book on that. But it is based on this fundamental epistemological idea that we need to think about dependencies in order to explain social phenomena. People are related with each other. You do have friends. And actually I have this, later on this lecture, I have this funny story, and I'm currently writing up this paper. I'm also mentioning these kind of things just for you to get a feeling of what actually people do, right? So this is so that you get a sense for what we do. I'm just writing this paper where I show that your friends tend to be better looking than you. I'm sorry to break it to you, but that's just pure logic. It's pure logic. And we'll have a lecture where I'm going to show you this a little more. It's really because we live in social networks like this, and these social networks, they have certain features. There are some people that have more friends than others, some people, have other attributes than others, and so on. And that fundamentally changes the way you experience the world. Think about the people you know. Think about the age distribution of the people that you know. Most of the people that you know will be similar to you in age. Most people will have a similar social class background than you. Most people that you know will have similar education than you. So actually most people will have similar opinions than you too. So that leads then to these scenarios, and this is sort of where sociology can connect to a lot of interesting things, like we observed in the US, for example, where you have polarization. And one group of the people cannot imagine how another group of people voted for a presidential candidate. But it goes in both directions, right? What it does, it creates these echo chambers. And we'll talk about these kind of echo chambers, these phenomena, how this kind of can lead to polarization and so on, where people reinforce each other's opinions. Why? Because they are already connected with similar people, they hear the similar kind of things. Right? And then they get kind of encouraged to even believe more in it, because that's what the majority of their people they are connected with, their friends, say. So these kind of things. This is sort of like a brief outline. Next week, or actually on Friday, we'll talk about precision, clarity, and what analytical sociology is all about. Social dynamics, emergence, tragedies. There's a tragedy of the common, where collectively we would want to do something, but individually we want to do something different, and we don't achieve that. Micro, macro. We'll talk about the wisdom of the crowd. So if you've been in my lecture last year, you actually participated in data collection. So I'm using that kind of data here, or we'll actually, let's see how the first years are doing this year. Let's see if they are going to beat you. You guys were actually pretty good in that, but we'll talk about that substantively. We'll have a whole lecture on that. Then social influence, and then we have another interesting thing, self-fulfilling prophecies. You might have heard about the term, something that is not true, but people, it's false, but people believe it is true, and because of the way they believe in it, actually turns out to, it changes and becomes true, right? So the bank is not bust, but everybody thinks the bank is bust. Everybody runs to the bank, withdraws their money, and the bank becomes bust. So that's our self-fulfilling prophecies. Success breeds success. norms, how norms come about, how sometimes false norms actually come about and are maintained, tipping and threshold models. It's kind of like something goes and then one more person and the whole thing changes in a way. It's sort of these non-linearities. And the prime example to look at that is segregation. That's kind of the stuff that I already talked about before. And lastly, I have 2 lectures about networks as well, where we bring these things together a little bit, and hopefully it all gives one picture. Yeah. So I think the whole thing is one picture and one way of looking at the social world. So for Friday, we have the first reading. It's an article by Alan Sokal, Transgressing the Boundaries. Yeah, it's just a funny article. If you read it, you'll understand why. You'll see it. And it's going to be the perfect backdrop for our lecture where I tell you what analytical sociology is all about. Okay? Okay, thanks so much, guys. See you on Friday.